Hello and welcome to another standard video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today I'm playing in the preview event, so I get to showcase the newest expansion a few days before release, and my weapon of choice today is going to be monored goblins, which received a ton of upgrades in AETHERDRIFT, including lots of ways to give our Krenko haste, so we can immediately tap it to make lots and lots of 1/1 goblin tokens, which is how this deck aims to often win the game. And taking a look at our 1-drops, we see Burnout Bastronaut, a 1/1 with Menace, and the new Start Your Engines mechanic. So when this creature enters, if we don't have any speed yet, we start out at 1 speed, and then that increases once on each of our turns whenever an opponent loses life, and then the max speed is 4. Once we reach max speed, the Bastronaut has a double strike, and at any point we can also pay 2 mana to give it 1 additional power until end of turn. So the sooner we can play a creature with the Start Your Engines mechanic, the sooner we can potentially get to max speed, where there's not only the Bastronaut gaining double strike, but at 3 mana there's also the Howl Squad Heavy, which is already a good goblin without the Start Your Engines mechanic, as a 2/3 that makes a 1/1 goblin token at the beginning of combat each turn, and that token has to attack this combat if able, and other goblins we control have haste, and that's incredibly important, not only for the 1/1 token to be able to attack right away, but also later to enable cards like Krenko. But then once we do get to max speed, now we can tap the heavy to make a red mana for each goblin we control, which will let us easily unload the rest of our hand, so that's also quite impressive. And then built into the mana base, we have another haste enabler with the Amonkhet Raceway, which also has the Start Your Engines mechanic, so we can potentially play it on turn 2 after playing a 1-drop, and then immediately get to speed 2 right away. And then later we can, at max speed, tap it to give one of our creatures haste until end of turn. So if we don't have a Howl Squad Heavy, that's another way to immediately activate Krenko to make a 1/1 goblin token for each goblin we control. Another important interaction between Krenko and Heavy is to go full control, wait for us to get the 1/1 goblin token from Howl Squad Heavy, and then before attackers are declared we can still tap Krenko. That way we'll get an additional goblin token from Krenko that can also immediately attack, since all our goblins will have haste. And then rounding out the deck, we're also playing the Draconautics Engineer, which is yet another way to give our creatures haste. We can exhaust it, and the exhaust ability we can only activate once, but we can activate each one of the exhaust abilities once. The first one putting a +1 counter on the Engineer, giving other creatures we control haste until end of turn. So if we have 5 mana, we can now play Krenko and give it haste. And for 4 mana, we can make a 4/4 Dinosaur Dragon token with flying. So if we also have the first exhaust ability still available, we can maybe attack with a dragon in the same turn as well. Also a decent mana sink for all the mana we could generate with a max speed Howl Squad Heavy. And then we've got some of the older goblins. Fanatical Firebrand, recently reprinted in Foundations, can immediately sacrifice it to deal 1 damage to any target. So if we don't have any good attacks, it's also a way for us to increase our speed if necessary. Then there's the Cacophony Scamp, which will deal damage to any target equal to its power when it dies. So that also plays well with all our Anthem effects, giving it additional power, and also a good way to keep getting in for damage to increase our speed. Then at 2 mana, there's the Horde Master, one of the payoffs for playing a goblin deck, giving other goblins +1/+1, and whenever this creature or another goblin we control dies, we get to exile the top card of our library. If it's a goblin creature card, we may cast that card until the end of our next turn, so that can also provide a steady source of card advantage in the face of a lot of removal, and also plays well with the additional mana from the Heavy, in case we're up against a board wipe, for instance. Then the Seer Slicer Goblin has the Raid mechanic, another mechanic that kind of incentivizes us to keep attacking with our smaller goblins, and then in this case we get to make an additional 1/1 goblin token end of turn. Also plays well with the go wide plan that we have going on with Krenko. And then at 3 mana, we're also playing the full set of the Dropkick Bomber, which will give other goblins +1/+1, and for a red mana can also give one of our goblins flying, and then end of turn that creature will get sacrificed if it dealt combat damage this turn. So a pretty useful ability if there's a board stall, or once again if we need to keep enabling our speed. And then the mana base, besides 4 raceways, also has Cavern of Souls, naming Goblin, to make those uncounterable against control, and then a lot of mountains. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Need to pick up a few more lands along the way, but Scamp can enable Seer Slicer most of the time. And that'll start us going nice and wide to enable Krenko. Alright, opponent on what could be a cat deck. So I'll play the raceway and attack. Speed goes up to 2. And raid has been enabled. So far so good. Sanctuary does point towards a monocolored deck. And Squire. Alright, so if they have an Arabo next turn making a cat token, that would be pretty effective. Howl Squad Heavy, one of our better draws. Especially when our opponent only has 1 toughness creatures on defense. And now we're just a land away from Krenko. And then does Scamp want to attack? Would be a good blocker. Once we're enabling Krenko, we're not going to struggle to close out the game, I think. So sure. And then next turn the Scamp is likely to also connect with the opponent, which gets us to max speed, so then the Heavy can help cast Krenko. Alright, and we found our land anyway, so I can just play Krenko and activate right away. So let's see here. I guess what I could do is go full control, wait for the Heavy to make another goblin, and then activate Krenko. The tokens still have haste, so still get a chance to attack, but this way I get to make an extra goblin token. And let's see, points at 18, so it's not quite going to be lethal this turn. So I will leave the Scamp back on defense. Opponent lines up some blocks. We've got max speed now, so I could still cast more spells. I don't think we are afraid of a Wrath of God in this matchup, but it would be funny. Make a token. So if our opponent does have a Wrath, we would deal 4 on the way out, but then we're on empty. That's just going to be an Arabo. Take 5 in the air, but now with a bomber can also give our goblins flying. So I'm just going to activate and attack. Sweet. Goblins beat cats. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand seems fine. Lots of cheap creatures. Facing a goblin deck, so likely the mirror match. But yeah, we're on the draw. Opponent's already getting to hit us to move speed up to 2. So we're definitely on the back foot. Gotta hope to get the Seer Slicer Goblin going first, maybe. Firebrand can remove Scamp. Alright, so go to attackers, see if we get to enable raid. And then could sack the Scamp to take out the Bastronauts, and then play Engineer instead of Seer Slicer, otherwise Firebrand can just trade for it. Because they would be able to remove Seer Slicer before we get to 1/1 token. Bomber pumps Firebrands. Yeah, it's reasonable to take that trade since we're on the back foot. I wouldn't be able to attack to enable raid next turn unless I also exhaust the Engineer, making it a 3/3. Yeah, I guess that's the plan. Got our own Start Your Engines card. Can play it. Exhaust the Engineer. Attack. get speed up to 2, and then Seer Slicer with Raid will at least make a token for us. And there's Krenko, that's kind of the must-answer card in this matchup. And don't have a great double block because of Firebrand, so we'll take it. Opponent's got max speed, but currently no card that benefits from it. So yeah, we're in a bit of a pickle here. No answer to Krenko, don't have our own copy, so game seems pretty much over. Unless we can maybe take to the skies with our dragon token. I guess we can do that at instant speed. If I play Horde Master for Engineer to attack, they would just shoot it with a Firebrand, so that wouldn't have worked out. Another Bomber. So your opponent can also eventually give their goblins flying. Can try and double Horde Master, but we're gonna end up losing one of them. So, what are our options? Yeah, I guess we can try and attack with a dragon, but we're most likely dead next turn. They cannot block with a flying Krenko, because it would get sacrificed, so should be able to get in for 4. Speed goes up. And we get to stick both Horde Masters at least, but I don't think it's gonna matter. Dragon Fodder to enable Krenko some more. Their own Seer Slicer. Alright, at least we can line up some reasonable blocks. Take 6. Find another Engineer. Firebrand. And Howl Squad Heavy. So, let's see here. I could play Firebrand to get to max speed by hitting my opponents. Then Raceway can give haste to something, which could be the Howl Squad Heavy, and that can make a bunch of mana, so I guess that's where we'll start. Can play Firebrand first, since it's basically free here. So now the Heavy can make a bunch of mana, which lets me play more Engineers. Play Heavy, give it haste with Engineer. I guess it already had the ability to make mana right away, and then can play another Engineer. Let's see here. Yeah, it's only goblins that have haste, so I did waste 1 mana. Is there any way I can give my dragon haste? I would need to activate another Engineer, basically. And now we can go attacking, but I think it's probably too little too late here. Opponent's got 14 blockers. So, yeah, at most I've got 9 damage going through. Still had a cool turn with the Howl Squad Heavy tapping for mana right away. If we had a little bit of extra mana, I guess we would have been able to make 1 more dragon and actually attack for lethal in the air. So yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere, thanks to the Raceway enabling the Howl Squad Heavy. And Firebrand getting us to max speed as well. So damage happens. We get some more triggers from our Horde Master. But we've already played land for turn. And yeah, Krenko is going to be a little bit late to the party. Alright, GG's. And an all-out attack will certainly do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keeper. If we can curve heavy into Krenko, we can immediately activate it and pull ahead. Facing a white artifact deck with a new glide car, reminiscent of the 1-2 from the Convoke deck. A Veteran Survivor, good with the glide car, and there's 2 of them. Play Engineer. Doesn't have the best of blocks right now. A Dynamite Diver, when it dies, deals 1 damage to any targets, and is good at crewing. So we take 3. Flying could be a problem for us later. And our opponent's got an instant speed vehicle to flash in, pump for 2. Firebrands can potentially remove a Survivor, but this seems like a good spot for a Howl Squad Heavy, since we'll have our 1/1 token go unopposed. I'll leave the Engineer back on defense. Speed already up to 2. 1 from playing the Heavy, 1 from connecting. So yeah, doesn't take much to get to max speed. But Flyer's still a concern. And there's another rocket. Up to 6 power. And a Bastronaut. Well, it's time for Krenko. That's what he's here for. Even though, let's see here. Yeah, we could remove a Survivor, making it more difficult for this to get another +1 counter. If I play Firebrand, could also make a Dinosaur with the Engineer. I think playing Krenko is still the best play we have. Go to attackers. Just send in the token. And then next turn we'll be able to attack with everyone. We're dead to another rocket. Okay. Activate Krenko. And yeah. We could get to max speed here to enable the raceway for what it's worth. But I think just a double Krenko activation here might do it. Opponent's at 16. So I can play Firebrand first. Which also gets us to max speed for what it's worth. So the Howl Squad Heavy could make a boatload of mana. So that's pretty neat. So I can play another Krenko. Tap this. Then make mana. And then we can still empty out our hands. 42 mana. Make a dragon. And exhaust to give it haste. And smash. Alright, so we had to take some beatings, but once Krenko got to untap, it was over very quickly. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand feels a little bit redundant with triple engineer, no real top-end cards. Let's try again. Alright, I'll try this out. Should be able to draw 4th land. Facing, a blue-green high toughness deck. Something I've got in the works as well. So we're not gonna have an easy time connecting. So could get our speed going, but we won't be able to connect to increase our speed. Not sure if our opponents got a way to make their creatures evasive, because eventually Krenko can take over if they don't have an answer to it. But we see the Pride, which our opponent can play for 1 mana next turn pretty easily. And we're not doing much right now. There's also the Tortoise, which can let their creatures deal damage equal to their toughness. The Negotiator can do the same for 1 turn. So, yeah, this is gonna hurt. Could just jump with a Scamp, and then deal 2 on the way out. Or I can take 11, fall to 9. Next turn play Krenko. In the meantime, our opponent can activate Bulwark on itself and on the Pride, but at least the Tyrant doesn't deal damage equal to its toughness anymore. And this is 4 to activate, so they're more likely to activate Bulwark twice. And then the more goblins we have alive for Krenko, the better. But yeah, we might have to jump this turn. Automaton. Good with the Bulwark. Opponent goes for a Pride and an all-out attack. Alright, so we can block Tyrants. That's just a 1/9. Although we could also block like so. It's actually tricky, because I don't want to necessarily lose the Horde Master. Definitely have to jump the Pride. So this way we're taking 3 and I can deal 2 on the way out. Because yeah, I could block, let's say, Horde Master on Pride, Scamp on Negotiator to take that out. But this seems fine to me. Find a Seer Slicer. Alright, and a Burnout Bastronaut. So we just want to play as many goblins as possible this turn. And then have Krenko available. Can even consider attacking here with a Horde Master, since that'll give us an extra goblin. Which will then also benefit Krenko. So yeah, unless our opponent can make their creatures unblockable, they're not getting through. That attacks. Probably want to block it, because our opponent can still activate Pride at instant speed. We'll just block with all of those. Are we in a position to attack already? Opponent's got 3 blockers. So Yeah, that should just be lethal here if they don't have anything. So don't even need to activate Krenko, can just attack with it. Go to damage. And maybe activate this, but yeah, we should have enough as is. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got a couple 1-mana goblins, bomber to pump them up. Yeah, it's not an exciting hand, but if we find our Horde Master, for instance, that'll make our Firebrands a lot better. Opponent blue-red. It's going to be a popular archetype in the preview event, since there's a lot of exciting new cards for the discard deck. And we're just going to send, and then maybe get in for 6 next turn. Krenko's a good pickup, although blue-reds could have access to some sweepers depending on their build. There's a Horde Master. Alright, I think we still try Bomber. And then maybe next turn we can deploy the Horde Master. If they have a 2 damage burn spell, they might take out the Scamp in response. Torch to exile it, in fact, so no damage dealt. Good to get that out of the way, since it would have been a clean answer to the Horde Master as well. So 3 mana. Opponent passes, and Howl Squad Heavy isn't bad either. So now the question is, do we try and set up for an ill-timed explosion? In which case, playing Horde Master is not a bad idea, so we at least get some goblins in return. Or do we play around an instant speed removal spell here, or a counter spell? Could be reasonable to attack first, see what they do, and then play Horde Master second main, even though it's not very intuitive. Could also just jam Howl Squad Heavy, which is the most mana efficient play, and then if our opponent doesn't have interaction, curving into Krenko would be quite powerful next turn. And then even if they have a board wipe, they would end up taking quite a bit of damage. Opponent's got the barrage to take out the bomber. So yeah, an ill-timed explosion would be pretty effective next turn. Opponent at 10. Our speed goes up. And yeah, there it is. But yeah, with the additional removal spell, there wasn't really an easy way around this. Opponent still needs to discard a card with mana value 3 at least. And our opponent's planning to mill us out with the Mindbreaker, it seems. Alright, let's give Krenko a try. And hope they can't deal 3 to it. Monuments, our opponent's definitely dedicated to the mill plan. Alright, so we've got Engineer plus Horde Master. Opponent's gonna braid Krenko. They might have wanted to do that first, so we didn't get the extra token. I think I still prefer Horde Master as opposed to just exhausting here. Next turn we could make a dragon. And now at least if they cast another sweeper, we'll get some goblins in return of the Horde Master's trigger. And then we see the Monument. Mill 2 cards for 1 mana, and then can exhaust to essentially double everything they've already milled. A Braid exiles a land off Horde Master, and we draw another one. So not the most exciting draw step. Speed goes up. I'll keep a land in hand just in case. Opponent milled 2 more, so that's nice. And they're gonna go for the Mindbreaker, milling half of my library, and then next turn Monuments can essentially win the game. So we need a good top deck. Cavern of Souls not gonna do it. Alright, GG's. So we have 21 cards remaining. And what can we name here? And our opponent's going for it. Nothing we can return out of the graveyard or anything we can cast in our upkeep. And that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a promising hand. Got Howl Squad into Krenko. Scamp to maybe increase our speed. Facing blue-white. And looks like an artifact deck with a turn 2 Foundry. So we already get our speed up to 2. And then if the heavy can stick the landing, we're likely to get it to 3. The bricks will get a plains and gain 2. So this seems like the type of deck that would have some board wipes in it. Either Wrath of God, or could be playing with the 5 mana artifact that only lets us keep 1 creature. So both of those are going to be quite backbreaking. Could also expect Saw Blades here, but happy to send in both 1/1s. And yep, there's the Saw Blades. Takes out the Scamp. Still get to increase our speed up to 3. And now a repurposing bay can immediately activate to tutor up some 3 mana artifact. Could be a removal spell for the heavy. And it's going to be a synthesizer instead. Alright. Now if our opponent wants to get a Glyph Bridge, that's a 5 mana artifact, so we potentially have some time. And yeah, this seems like a good opportunity for Krenko. So once again I'm going to go full control, so we can first get our token from heavy before activating Krenko. So we get more goblin tokens. And attack all out. Got max speed, so now the raceway can give future goblins haste. And gotta hope there's no board wipe. Another synthesizer we can deal with. And then I imagine we'll see removal on Krenko, but the damage has been done. Yep, there's the Perilous Snare, which can exile Krenko. Is actually looking at the Howl Squad Heavy as well. We do have another haste enabler in hand, so we would prefer them exiling the heavy, but Krenko's gone. Opponent does have 3 8/8s, so next turn they could potentially close out the game in a single attack. But let's see what we can come up with. So Bomber, I can make a whole bunch of mana with a heavy and basically fly all my goblins. And that should pretty much do it. Yeah, we have 6 goblin tokens. Can even play the engineer first. Tap this for mana. And then just fly all of them. Could also make a dragon token, I suppose. And give that haste. That's 4 mana. And then 1 more to give it haste. And that should do it. So yeah, sometimes a single Krenko activation is all you need, and that's why being able to give it haste is so critical. And now this deck has basically 12 ways to do so. Of course, Howl Squad Heavy, by far the easiest one to set that up, as you can just curve 3-drop into 4-drop. But yeah, monored goblins might be the real deal in the upcoming standard. So that'll do it for today's gameplay. Wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.